who's they now? Because whoever they are, I have more money than them. If the person with the most money has that conscious conversion and just thinks, maybe there's something beyond being an asshole. Maybe being an asshole isn't the greatest thing that I can be. Maybe there's something else. And then, so maybe a campaign that targets whoever's the next person that's going to be richer than Elon Musk,
and everybody on the way. I think a campaign
think.
Absolutely. Like a campaign that is directed, like record video letters to the editor, but letters to the leaders. And what if we had a lot of people doing that? What if we had a critical mass, of entrepreneurial or public figure type people creating video letters to leaders saying, this is what I think we should be doing differently. How much fun would that be?
But Sara, the thing is, the leaders aren't the ones that are making these decisions, right? Somebody's deciding that these leaders can be in power. So it could be a campaign called Letters to They, because they are the ones who make the decision, right? Martians landed.
Yes.
Wearing Prada suits.
Yes.
Drinking Henry Seltzer.
Yes.
Chewing juicy fruit.
Yes, and?
Your branding here.
Yes, brand.
Your message here.
Yes, and?
A verse about.
Yes.
Your product here.
Yes.
I'm Hersh Rephun.
Yes, and?
I'm a message therapist.
Yes.
And I have a podcast.
Yes, brand.
That's right, that's it.
Yes.
We'll help you fix the world.
Yes.
Or your bottom line.
All right.
Your bottom line.
Get it. I get it. Welcome to the Yes Brand Podcast.
My guest today on Yes Brand is Sara Yamtich. Sara is the CEO and founder of Conscious Conversion. The best way I can describe Conscious Conversion is a holistic multimedia marketing agency supporting thought leaders and spiritual entrepreneurs. So stop there for a second and think about what spiritual entrepreneurs conjures up for you, because we're going to talk about it. But I do know that one of the things, because I relate to this as well, one of the things that's very close to Sara's heart is seeing people who want to make changes in the world, have an impact in the world, and then helping them get their message out and get their message to people. And I relate to that. So Sara, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Hersh. It's delightful to be here with you.
So this is a time of change. I think we all know. By the way, Sara is coming to us from Maui, and that's part of the change. She's fairly new to Maui. She and her son have moved there. She lived in Costa Rica. She's described herself as kind of a semi-nomadic or nomadic soul. One of the things we can also touch on is doing something new at this moment in time. Is the change happening because of all the stuff that's going on in the world, or is the change that we're engaging in happening in spite of it? Tell us a little of your recent experience.
Wow. Well, that's a great question. And I think it's both and, either or, none. Because I made the decision to leave Atlanta, Georgia in 2019. Well, I made the decision in 2017. I was living there, and then I went to Costa Rica and had this magical experience at a waterfall and had this just sort of a spiritual epiphany. And then semi-consciously got my life in order to move down in August of 2019 to Costa Rica, which was 6 months before the proverbial, what hit the fan in certain ways. So not that it hadn't before and since, but so it's hard to know whether, time is this interesting thing. Did I have some sort of preconceived notion of what was happening in the world and knew to get the heck out of Dodge? Or was that this beautiful coincidence? So it's kind of hard to know which the state of the world and whether that moves me towards change or whether my change is happening in spite of what's happening around me. I think that's a great question. Like
you do probably in the spiritual realm, it's probably more about the questions than the answers. We don't necessarily know what the answers are until we hit upon questions that are so inspiring that we have to find an answer for them. Now, I'm hoping this show, this Yes Brand show, will be interesting because every guest that I have on has a brand. We're diving into the whys and wherefores of how we sell the truth in this case. How do we get behind our brands and do what we all call selling, which is to get people to pay attention to us and either buy what we're putting out there or adopt what we're putting out there, and still stand out in the crowd, be sincere. It's almost like how do you be sincerely arresting, sincerely shocking, not needlessly theatrical. So in order to understand what we're working with here, tell the audience a little bit about conscious conversion and a couple examples of maybe your clients and how you're helping them toward this new paradigm.
I love the question because it really shows how in sync you are. Yeah. So what I call that sort of that thing that you just spoke to is positively polarizing. You have to sort of stop people in their tracks these days with what we call marketing. And I think everything requires a new paradigm these days right now, like in my opinion, the educational system, the political system, the economic system, everything needs a reframe, whether that's a conceptual reframe or an actual new structure, a new architecture to the system. And that new paradigm is something that has to be, it's kind of an inner job, right? And so we have to speak to the hearts and minds of people. We have to really get into the nooks and crannies of people's hearts and minds. It's not about marketing and trying to get people to buy a thing that they don't really need or purchase a thing that they don't really need. It really needs to be about helping to create an internal shift towards a more regenerative way of living on the planet, a more compassionate way of living on the planet, something that gets away from the extreme polarity of good versus evil, light versus dark, and finding the middle path of how can we find unity consciousness. And then we're getting pretty esoteric and dorkily spiritual, but how can we find that sort of unity consciousness and inspire that? And that's really what conscious conversion is about. Conversion is this metaphor for sales. We say how many conversions did you get, in digital marketing?
Right.
But I really want to think about it in a very more conscious way, because that is the new paradigm, is how can we bring consciousness to all the shadows and all the stuff in our society? How can we bring more consciousness to all of that? And so if we can help create that shift in a more mainstream audience of let's live on this planet in a better way, let's find some middle ground, let's all connect with one another. Yes, and not either or. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good point, because I think that a lot of what's happening now is people don't accept the offer, right? Two sides of the spectrum don't accept the premise of the other, even in theory, even in let me see what, if the whole world were improv and everybody had to do the yes and game and they had to accept what the other person's saying just for fun, just for the sake of the game, because you're playing the game, and then give them something back, I wonder how that would play. You'd have leaders of nations saying, this is what's happening to the planet, and then the opposed party would say, instead of no, it isn't, would say yes and something else they have to come up with. You have a business mind, a marketing mind. We're not coming at spirituality from some kind of nirvana, some kind of blissful ignorance about the way the world works. And that's where I think when people hear spiritual entrepreneur, it sounds like some kind of oxymoron. Like they think that, that's, if you're spiritual, why would you care about entrepreneurship? Like, why would you care about? Can you speak a little to that?
I'd love to. That's my favorite topics. Thank you, Hersh. So entrepreneurship, I had one of those epiphanal moments in 2012, 13, 14, and during that period of time when online marketing was starting to become more sort of prevalent. And I started to feel like entrepreneurship was a spiritual act. It's like you really have to find yourself. There's a hero's journey, a deep hero's journey that one must go on in order to be an entrepreneur. You've got to walk through the fire. You've got to take risks. You've got to jump off cliffs. You've got to pray, you know. A lot of time,
Yeah.
especially coming from like the solopreneur into entrepreneurship, you know, there's just a lot that comes with it that feels very much like a spiritual act. And I suppose it depends on how you're looking at it. If you're looking at it in terms of here's how to make six figures in 6 days with my free manifestation guide, that does get a little old and that does get a little pretty darn bypassy. I've seen those kinds of
Yeah.
things that I do think are well intentioned, but it's to me, I'm really more interested in people who are actually embodying a new way of being in the world. Like, okay, so sure, six figures would help, right? It would help us contribute to our local economy. What's the intention behind wanting to create that level of prosperity or abundance in my life? What do I actually want to have happen? What kind of impact do I want to make in the world? And that's the motivation that I want to interact with as an entrepreneur.
I had a guest on my other podcast, Truth Tastes Funny. He was using as an example making a certain amount of money per month. And he said, so if this is the amount of money that you would like to make per month, what do you want it for? What do you want it for? Like, that was a very interesting question because most of the time people figure, yeah, you need it. I got my rent. I got my, you know, and he was just sincerely asking, like, well, what is it? What is it for? Like, what is the purpose that the money's supposed to serve? Let's dig as deep as we can into what your want is and what you're really hoping to do, and not worry about the money, because this much money is really this much money, and it's, you know, it's all relative to some weird preconception that we have of what it means. And I think sometimes we find out that money is really just status, you know, like at a certain point to be able to say that you're this profitable as a human. And that's a weird gauge to consider your profitability as a human being. What I think people don't always understand is what when someone says a new paradigm, what do they mean? Recycle? Like, is that it? Is it recycling? You know, what is a new? So talk to us a little bit about this vision, this collective vision for a different world. Because that, I think, while it sounds so esoteric, is really at the heart of your brand. Is really this world, right? This other evolution, which people can relate to, because we relate to space travel, we relate to aliens, we relate to ghosts, we relate to all the things that we see in all of our favorite movies, and yet we can't necessarily understand consciousness or karma or sometimes compassion. Like, but we get aliens and we get the Planet of the Apes and we get all that stuff. So what is the new world, this new world that we're hopefully in your mind striving to create?
So on one level, I could answer this for hours and have so much fun. But I will do my best not to do that. On one hand, it's a mystery.
We'll come back
Great.
for the next 10 episodes of Yes
Okay,
Brand.
great.
Sara
Yes, please.
Yamtich, episode 6. If you remember in episode 5. Okay, go ahead.
On one hand, it's an unfolding mystery. And on one hand, the world that you're asking me about, I don't know what it looks like. And nobody really, really, truly knows what it looks like. And yet we are being called forth to experiment with envisioning it and living into it, experiment with embodying what we think is possible. Because honestly, the way that things are going with, the climate or whatever, injustices in the world or censorship or politics and the polarity of politics, wherever you look, medical, pandemic, like wherever you look, there's something that you like, that needs to, something needs to shift there. I don't know exactly what it is. So we know that there's something that needs to happen. And I think that the onus is on us as individuals. Nobody's going to come and rescue us. So the onus is on us as individuals and as communities, whether that be your geographic community or your online community, or both, in my case, both. It's on us to talk about it and to visualize what and feel, really deeply feel into an embodiment of what that new world could look like. And we might stumble into something and be like, well, that's not it. Or that's it, but that's not how we get there.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's moments in my life where I'm like, well, that was an interesting experiment that I will not do again.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
I think we need
that was a glorious
lot of
failure.
yeah, exactly. And I don't mind it, because I know that we need to do this. And that's bringing me to another piece of it, which, well, there's so much. Recycling is it's important, I guess, but it's a bit of a bypass. It's one of those things that people tell you to do so that you can check it off in your head and not have to do something a little bit deeper or more important or more embodied. The embodiment is really sort of like, I think, like asking the earth around you, asking the trees, getting in communion with the natural world and being like, how can I be of service to the regeneration of this planet? And then deeply listening. Maybe recycling is part of it, should be. I mean, it's an easy enough thing to do, whether they're actually doing the recycling business or not, I don't know, but you might as well do that. But what else can we do? Is it something about, living off grid? Maybe that's too extreme. Is it something about doing something in your local community? Like just really asking the question, living in the question, and looking for the answers around you and following that. Another thing that I think is really important is for us to think extremely creatively. We cannot be boxed in by what society has told us is okay up to this point. We have to get creative. And that's one reason why I'm super passionate about plant medicine. That's not for everybody. I'm not necessarily advocating it for everybody, but that's something that I do. I work with a cactus medicine that has a mescaline potency. And what that kind of thing does is it creates new neural pathways in the brain. It creates new ways of looking at the world. It completely transformed my life whenever I first embarked on this ceremonially in 2018. So that also helps me kind of start to feel into like, how can we start to embody a new paradigm? And what are some of the visions we could have of it? How can we actually create some sort of garden of Eden on this planet? Is that possible? Are we being too pie in the sky? And even if we are, can we get a percentage of it and work towards that? Anyway, I could keep going. I'll shut up for a moment.
Well, but the if you think about it, I think we have to approach this stuff with the same brazenness that industrialists who just want to, make more money and have convinced themselves that the planet's just resilient or whatever it is. I wonder what they think, but everybody does. Everybody's baffled by, well, what do these big corporations think? Like, they're smart. They may be disinforming their audiences and using, various tools to do that. That's no big scientific feat, but they know the truth. And they have access to the truth, and they had it before we did because they're in the industries that are causing it. So what is the imperative, and can those minds evolve? Because I think what I picture when you talk about it is actually a conscious conversion. People consciously feeling like they want to actually go this way. Like, yeah, what am I going to lose if I start to envision something really amazing? What do the wealthy lose from, and a lot of the people who take part in some of the various events and things that your clients do have means, right? So you're speaking in a lot of cases to people with means to contribute to these endeavors, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a beautiful point. And in my world, in this world of what we're calling spiritual entrepreneurship, I don't know that a lot of us have a ton of means when it comes to making big
Right.
contributions to the at the scope. But what I love, and I want to come back to that, like I want to talk more about that, but I just want to also back up to, I love what you're saying though about that sort of conscious conversion at the very top, because that's really our best hope. And that's where, instead of being this polarized, like us versus them, how can we defeat them? Getting into like, how can we inspire? How can we inspire the shift? Because it is so joyful to make that shift. There is an incentive to make that shift because it feels somehow like having integrity, being in integrity feels good, and
Yeah.
those people at the very, very top, are they feeling good? How are they feeling about their impact on the world? I'm curious.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what this has opened up for me, this is why I love doing this and why I love having these conversations, is because if you think about it, the people who have to be reached and consciously converted are that upper echelon of power, simply because the balance of power is so off. If we were looking at a world where everybody doing their share is going to somehow change the world, then that would be great. And it's possible that there is power in numbers, and that the will of the people will change the will of those in power. But in reality, the fastest route is a conscious conversion of the most powerful. And among those elite, among those power players, there are likely people who are primed already for that, because their minds is that much open to it. But they, for various reasons, like you learn a lot from watching The Handmaid's Tale. If you watch the Handmaid's Tale, that show, you get a look at what America is, and what America has always been. So it's, I hate to say it that way, but that is what it is. That is America. That isn't like
Well,
America in some dystopian, that's America pretty much. It's just and
it's
if you
covert.
look at those people at the very top, yeah, you look at the people at the very top, they're struggling with some of those realities that they're responsible for.
Well,
So,
and if you have some compassion,
you know,
if you believe that you're responsible for a bit of a dystopic world, your ego is going to do everything it can to sweep that under the rug and keep moving forward. I mean, so if we can have some compassion for, like, like that's what everybody's talking about, shadow work, and who really knows what it means. But to me, what that actually means,
right.
that sort of buzzword actually means, is really taking the time to look at, like, what have I done on a micro level that I feel some level of shame for? And how can I shine some light on that and forgive myself for it so that I can not do that thing anymore unconsciously? So the people at the top if they have that little awakening voice in there, somewhere in there, which we imagine that they do, there's a lot for them to work with in terms of like shame of what they've done in the world, probably, I would imagine. And shedding
Yeah.
light on that is going to require a lot of self-compassion and maybe some compassion from the masses. So I do believe in the power of numbers. I do think that if enough of us really do kind of convert to living in harmony with nature, leveraging technology to live more in harmony with nature, to asking these kinds of questions, to living in the questions about, like, what is the new paradigm? What can we create? And by new paradigm, I just want to also caveat that there are shamanic, indigenous, ancestral lineages that have been thinking about this for thousands of years. We're not the first people to think about what the world could be like and embody it. Others have been doing that for a long, long, long time. It's just that mainstream, technologically and economically advanced, and I say that with quotes, cultures can now start to embody that as well and bring that to a more mainstream place on the planet so that it has an impact. Anyway, I digress. I don't even know where I
Yeah.
was going with that, because it's such an inspiring conversation to me.
It's all, that's, yeah. And that's why we record it, because then we can listen back to it and go like, oh, I don't know where. Let me go back to that point of view. We have 10 episodes of this one episode, so we're going to do this a 10-hour. This will be a 10-hour mini series. But I would love to do a campaign that targets beyond, that even aims higher than the ultra rich. But because what happens is you have this dichotomy. We talk about how the country's polarized as though the U.S. is polarized in two halves. That's really only one polarization. Another polarization is the 1% or the 0.01% and, everybody else, including the people that are, that are subscribing to whatever.
1,000%.
So my thing
there's the
is,
divide and conquer thing.
Let's do a campaign. Right. Let's do a campaign that's geared at the 0.01%. And like the opening line would be something like, so you're richer than Elon Musk. Now what? And it's like, so what are you going to do? So now you've passed Elon Musk. He's no longer the richest man in the world. So we can stop talking about him for 5 minutes. You're the richest person in the world. And what are you going to do? Are you going to make an ass of yourself and just be a nerd and a buffoon? And I'm not pointing at anybody in particular, but I'm like saying, is that one thing you could do? Or are you gonna start looking backward the other way at, okay, now I can survey the entire world because it's mine. Oh, well, now the world is yours. Now what do you want to do with it? Do you want to keep Putin in place? Do you want to keep this thing there? Do you want to do, and if I had that much money, and I've never thought about it, but if I had that much money, the first thing I would do is find out who's calling all the shots, right? Like, yeah. I would be like, okay, so I'm now worth, whatever trillions of dollars, whatever it was. And I have access to everybody. So I'm going to find out who are they? Who's they now? Because whoever they are, I have more money than them, presumably. Maybe if they pool it all together. Now I can find out what they're doing and why. So maybe an autocracy, so to speak, isn't the worst thing ever if the autocrat at the top with the most money, the person with the most money, has that conscious conversion and just thinks maybe there's something beyond being an asshole. Maybe being an asshole isn't the greatest thing that I can be. Maybe there's something else. And then so maybe a campaign that targets whoever's the next person that's going to be richer than Elon Musk.
And everybody on the way. I think a campaign absolutely. Yeah. Like a campaign that is directed, record video letters to the editor, but letters to the leaders. And what if we had a lot of people doing that? What if we had a critical mass, of entrepreneurial or public figure type people creating video letters to leaders saying, this is what I think we should be doing differently, or this is how I think, this is what I think we need to be embodying, or what we need to question, and tagging them on all freaking social media and publishing that. How much fun would that be? We
could not only do that, but Sarah, the thing is, you think, okay, we're going to write to these leaders, which is fine, but the leaders aren't the ones that are making these decisions, right? Somebody's deciding that these leaders can be in power. So it could be a campaign called Letters to They, because they are the ones who make the decision, right? I remember talking to a friend of mine during the 2016 election, and he's a mercurial type, and I'm at some point I'm going to start crediting people, but some of these stories I can't just use their name, but mercurial character, and I say, wow, I wonder who's going to win this election, and he says they haven't decided yet, and I go what? He goes, yeah, they haven't decided yet. That's why there's all this kind of mystery around it. They don't even know. They haven't even decided. I said, who's they?
Which
they.
So it's which figurehead do we want to put in charge? Which figurehead will be the most impactful for our endeavors.
And so I think that that's maybe the certainly a hard target for conscious conversion. You know, in terms of humor, it has that self-deprecating thing. I'm writing letters to they, right? Who are they? I'm admitting that I'm tiny. I'm admitting that I'm insignificant and inconsequential. But to your point, Sarah, so is everybody else. And if you actually ball everybody else up on a mission, then they are consequential. So, you know, this. But I love this idea also of being the richest person in the world, because I do find it interesting the way people respond to Elon Musk. Like, you know, based on what? You know, based on the richest man in the world thing. But isn't Putin really the richest man in the world? Doesn't he control more money than Elon Musk does? But he just can't be going around buying Twitter because that's not his bag, you know? He doesn't buy Twitter. He's doing, you know, seriously horrible things for whatever his problem is. But it's like, we're not even talking about Putin. We're talking about they. They are. There is no one person that's making these decisions. I don't even think Elon Musk knows who it is, because I think he's too wrapped up in himself. You know? So a lot of these people don't even see who they are, because they are, because they're so wrapped up in me. So it's like, you know, I don't know who they are, you know, they. And some of these people are with them, right? They are in the same room as them, but they don't necessarily know who they are. And I think it would be great to address they directly to find out, you know, maybe there's more. Because I guarantee you that none of they are sitting there on that mountaintop going, this is plenty. None of them are sitting there going, I am enough. This is enough. I am fulfilled. This feels good. This feels wonderful. They're like, what's that? What's that over there? Ooh, I better get on a plane.
I need more.
I better go spout some anti-Semitic bullshit that's going to make me all of a sudden feel like people are listening to me and paying attention to me for 5 minutes. It's like, man, the unrest that these people have to unload, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what I think we have to get at. What are their problems? Don't judge them just because they have all this money. This may be more of a problem than you realize, this money. You know, they might have been perfectly happy with $1 million, $100 million, if they didn't have any other way to get any more. And they had to accept that as like that there was a cap, there was a limit, you know? Mm-hmm. So, but that's what I'm thinking now with the conscious conversion thing, is that, and you're so right, that we pull everybody else along with that. You're pulling everybody along. It's like, who's the campaign for? It's for anybody with $1 trillion or less. So who needs a conscious conversion? Anybody with $1 trillion or less. But that's kind of where I'm looking to lately, I guess. You know. So tell me more about your experience. Tell me a little more about your life experience, because I know what you've been doing recently, but I don't know much about like where you grew up or how you came to pursue this as your life's mission.
Wow. Okay. So I'll just do a quick rundown of my background. I grew up in Southwest Missouri.
Yeah, do a quick one, and then in episode 2, in episode 2 we'll do the full life story, but.
Yeah, so grew up in Southwest Missouri, single mom in a trailer. Went to college for anthropology and women's studies, got a master's in social work policy. and really wanted to make a positive impact in the world and didn't necessarily, I was kind of a closet spiritual. I had rejected dogmatic religion at a pretty young age. So it took me a while to sort of refine my place in spirituality because I was very skeptical and somewhat traumatized, not by my own family, but by the community and the perceptions that they held about certain things and people in the world. And so it took me a while to come back to it. And I ended up going to work towards making an impact on the world in a more bureaucratic sort of way. So I ended up working for the federal government in a congressional office, working on women's policy issues on the Hill and working on violence prevention policy. And then I got a job at Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Division of Violence Prevention, and worked as a legislative policy analyst there. And then ended up taking some time in Tanzania, working in the Global AIDS program and writing speeches for the ambassador, and working in Kenya on a violence against women and children survey to educate folks there about violence. So I had this very, in some ways really fulfilling and successful career path. And yet working in bureaucracy did not actually work for me. It didn't speak to who I am. I'm kind of a renegade spirit with a lot of wanderlust. And I have I think a tough time. I very quickly started to, and I wouldn't say it was all started. I think this was a continuation from my youth, a very skeptical sort of questioning youth. But I was like, why are we all locking ourselves up in concrete boxes and staring at boxes of light all day long when we could be outside communing with nature? And I don't even know what that looks like. It's not like I'm this huge gardener or anything like that. I'm not a homesteader, but like I just felt like this is weird. The way that humans have chosen to operate in the world, doing paperwork and staring at computer screens all day, shielded from the sunlight and from nature in these concrete jungles, it doesn't make any sense. So long story short, I jumped ship, started on a path towards getting a certification in life coaching. I got into digital marketing that way and ended up really enjoying it. I ended up doing some freelancing and landing a job at a digital marketing agency. And quickly that agency, which started out really as just having like 3 to 5 clients, jumped up to like 40 clients under my purview. And I started thinking in ads and in kind of a good way, like how would I want to frame this in order that it could speak to more people, and how could I do that in an authentic way? And then the more I did that, the more I was like, I need to work with people and with brands and with individuals that I can get behind, that I really feel are making a positive impact. I don't want to do this for 6 figures in 6 days, Russell Brunson, no offense, but I really wanted to do it in a way that felt really, really authentic. And so I started my own agency in 2018, and this is glossing over so much, but I started my own agency in 2018 so that I could work with people that I thought were making a big impact in the world, and I could help to bring their message into the world. And that just continues today, except it's just continuing to evolve and shift and change the way that I operate, because I am constantly evolving.
I think this is the time for people of that sensibility, because the world's been changing, like we started talking about in the beginning of the conversation. Are we causing it? Is it our reaction to it? But the fact is that there is no such thing as a linear path, really, because nothing is stable enough to really be linear, like it was even when I got out of college. When I was going to college, I could have gone to law school, gone to medical school, or, I went to film school for a little while, but it was like, that I went to work in advertising. But you could envision careers, and you certainly wouldn't start worrying about the planet or worrying about the weather or worrying about, which some people still don't worry about these things at all. And, God bless them if they have no worries about any of these things, and they just it all just seems fine. But, there wasn't anything that really required a lot of deep thought. If you didn't want to, you could just pretty much be a blank, and that would come with A, B, and C.
Yeah.
And I don't know that really exists. And I don't know that this generation of young people are interested in that at all. It doesn't seem that way with my kids, and it doesn't seem that way with their friends, that there's like that, oh, I'm going to just go
You
do
know,
this.
I think they get a bad rap from the older generations for like not having enough motivation, but I think they're just motivated by very different things, and I don't know, I'm not an expert in this, but I think that there's a need for fulfillment. I think
Yeah.
like to feel like you're actually having an impact in the world, to feel like you're actually making a difference. And if you don't have that, it's so easy to get pulled into other distractions. But I think we yearn as humans on a deep soul and spiritual level to have fulfillment and impact in the world right now. And we're less concerned because we see how unstable money is and we see how unstable all of those things are, that those things are becoming less and less important. I mean, gosh, you know, I, I wish for my immediate community and family and myself and those around me and all of us to have our needs so well met that we can exist in a deep state of creatorship and creation and making the world that we want to live in. Like I want us all to have our needs and our resources well met. And we also at the same time, yes, and realize that um, things like money are less important and not nearly so important as the impact that we're going to have in the world. And I think that the younger generations are feeling that more and more. And that's my prayer too.
Yeah, I think that's beautifully stated, Sarah, because the feelings that they have are like, as I listen to you speak, I get that discomfort, I think, that we all have of a certain generation, like looking at this and being disingenuous. You like I think there's a stigma around purpose, right? You talk about purpose, you talk about doing good, and people will kind of look at it with a certain dubiousness, like it's either presumptuous of you or you're ignoring the realities of day-to-day life. But young people are coming up in an era where, the future isn't secured, isn't promised to them, and their do-good inclinations are not. They're not ashamed of them. Like they're not ashamed to be an activist. There was a time not long ago, and still, where if you're an activist, quote unquote, you're some kind of nut. You're some kind of tree hugger. You're a. Now, sure, there were people who engaged in that stuff for their own gratification, just to make themselves feel like they're making a difference, but they really don't care. Or they are so unfulfilled that they look into new agey, quote unquote, stuff to try to kind of solve the problems. But I think this new generation is more genuine. And
I do too.
So
Yeah.
they don't have these conversations about whether it's okay to have purpose. That sounds,
Yeah.
foolish to them. But people my age and older than myself, and people who have been brought up in a traditional business dynamic, will have this sense of, okay, yeah, purpose is all well and good. Don't sound too foofy about it. Don't sound presumptuous or pretentious about it. And I think there's a stigma. There's a stigma around doing good things.
I think so too. And I think that that's what early in this conversation I said, we're going to like kind of experiment and fail and then say, oops, and then reroute and try something different. And that's like what I think we have to do. As those of us in our collective generation, we have to, if we want to live in integrity, then we kind of have to stumble around. And sure, there might be moments where we're spiritually bypassing and we're like, oh yeah, I'm going to try this thing. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's not actually the thing. So we have to have compassion for ourselves and for each other as we figure out how to deal with the stigmas and how we deal with like the various like onslaught of existential crises that we might have around putting
Right.
ourselves out there as activists or as public figures or as digital marketers in this age. And I completely agree that I think that younger people are less apt to have these existential crises. And that every generation is a bridge, right? And I'm just really tapping into in what ways that me and my generation is a bridge or are a bridge. There's sort of the way that we've been operating for hundreds, if not arguably thousands of years on this planet in a very top-down, hierarchical, patriarchal way. And we're looking towards a newer way that is more in alignment with nature, that is more sort of midline and integrated and embodied. And how can I be a bridge from that world to this new world that has to unfold for us to survive on this planet? The planet's going to survive no matter what, but how, if we want to continue to evolve on this planet, then we're going to have to shift.
It's funny because our minds are often so small as to what we accept as real. You know, like if there were a landlord of the earth and the landlord was a person and we knew that they were the landlord and they came over and said, listen, you got to clean this place up. If you leave this place looking like shit, you're out. You're out. I'm throwing you out. I'm throwing your shit out, and you're going to have to find some other place to live. And that's kind of what the Earth's saying. That's kind of what's happening. That's kind of what's going on with the storms and the ice caps and all that stuff.
Well,
but we don't believe it because it's not a person with a shrill voice.
This is very much in alignment with the spiritual epiphany I had in 2017 at a waterfall in Costa Rica. I was having that. I was like, knock us off, like get rid of us. We fucked it up. I'm sorry. And I felt this deep voice, I didn't hear voices, but I felt it, a voice of the earth saying, we've done that before. It didn't really work because we're here again. So I would rather we just you just realize that you are Earth. We are conscious embodiment of this planet. We are animals on this planet that have this amazing consciousness. And the Earth would prefer that we shift that consciousness to be more in alignment with who we are as conscious embodiments of this planet, as opposed to having to be, okay, let's do a deluge. Let's burn it all to the ground again and see if they can build it back up and do it right this time. Way better if we actually just step in line with an evolving consciousness. Way more efficient.
I mean,
more efficient.
We can get, we can see if we can get Morgan Freeman or Judi Dench to be the Earth, to be the planet, and try to get them to break it down for the people. But I still think even that would be this idea of targeting the 0.01% theoretically in a campaign is something I want to think more about, only because, you know, in the end, what are we trying to do? In the end, we're trying to affect change. We're trying to, you know, help your clients, help their clients, their audience. And in the end, it's all supposed to circle back and serve us and get us somewhere. And in order to do that, we have to reach a lot of people. That's all there is to it, you know?
Absolutely. You know, one thing
that's what happens in these conversations.
One thing I petitioned for, you said that maybe I work with clients who have a lot of resources, and actually the people I'm really wanting to work with, and I have some of these clients are people who don't necessarily have resources like that. Like the people that are in my immediate vicinity who are fucking amazing, like channelers of really, really good information and good work in the world, conscious embodiment, this plant medicine, like all these things that are really cool. And they don't have money to pay for me to put together a media kit and a PR plan and run ads and do the copywriting and do all of that. I have a team I have to pay. I can't pay for it myself either. So I'm like, are there people that have resources that would like to help fund the awakening of the planet and to help fund the new paradigm? Because wouldn't it be cool if you and I could collaborate on a campaign like that? It would require some resources. Who wants to help put in some resources to put some expertise, some marketing expertise behind a campaign reaching into that consciousness of the 0.01%? Because that would be a fun project.
Yeah. Well,
let's write a pitch deck.
We've figured out this much in under an hour. In 51 minutes and a half, we've figured out this much. And all we have to do is make sure when this episode starts to get around, and then we'll share it and put a call out to people who have the means to support these kinds of endeavors and want to reach the 0.01%. It's funny because if you're targeting the 0.01%, there's humor just in who we would turn down as influencers, because the stakes are so high. It's like you could get, George Clooney, you could get whoever, and you'd be like, listen, I'm really sorry, but they are not impressed with this. You got to understand, we're going after a very, very elite group of viewers here, and they're not impressed by people with George Clooney has almost $1 billion. I'm sorry, but that's okay. It's cute. That's nice.
Well,
but
I wonder
you're not
if
gonna
they
listen to him.
I was going to say, do they care about what he has to say?
They might. They might. But I think they also. I think the humor would come in somebody like George Clooney saying, "Listen, I know I'm just not even a near billionaire, but I want to serve you. I want to help with whatever you want to do. Tell me what would make okay, I'm George Clooney and you own my ass. I'll do whatever you want. Now take a deep breath, look out on the world, and what do you want to do? It's that mindset, which is what, and again, he's talking to they. We don't know who we still don't know who they are. Here we've been talking for 53 minutes and a half now, and we still don't know who they are. But Clooney probably has some idea who they are, but why he won't tell me. So I don't know. But see, we do need a little bit of some resources, and and then it'll come into focus. Then this campaign will come into focus. But I think it would be great. It would be fun. That was not our endeavor when we sat down really to. It's always like I always leave room for it, and I always like to throw out some ideas, but I would have no idea what the thing would be. It's only that it happens,
I think we could. We could collaborate. We could collaborate with one another and with the universe and with our respective teams to come up with something brilliant.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? Having worked with a lot of brands over the years, I'm not intimidated by having the Earth as a client. I think I've dealt with far worse. And so, I'm all right.
I want that
I'm
to
all
be
right
our
with that.
motto.
Well,
It's like the Earth is our client.
the Earth is our client. I know you're in a different time zone in Maui. I don't know whether it's like the middle of the night there or what, but leave our audience with any thought or wish or contemplation that you would like to share.
I think just as much as possible, if we can live in the question of how we can be of service to the evolution of our consciousness and of this planet, like that to me is the more that we each can ask that question on a daily basis. Every morning I wake up and I ask, like, how can I be of service to an awakening planet, to the consciousness of this planet, and to the regeneration of this beautiful home that we have. The more that we each can do that, and the more ourselves we become in that process, the more we live into our purpose and into our dharma. And I know we talked about the stigma associated with that, but the more of us that just kind of brush that off and let that all go, release the stories, and just live as much as possible into how can we create more sort of a beautiful world that we can all co-create and collaborate in, the better. So just live in the question.
All right.
If you liked the show,
Yes, and
it worked for you,
yes, then
subscribe and leave a
yes, friend.
5-star review.
Yes, friend.
Tell all your friends.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Did I make it clear?